Welcome to Understand All. I'm your host, Aslekeir Gairleif, and today we're embarking on a fascinating journey into the world of the butterfly effect. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that just a fancy way of saying that small things can have big consequences? Well, yes and no. The butterfly effect is so much more than a simple cause and effect relationship. It's a mind-bending concept that challenges our understanding of predictability, chaos, and the interconnectedness of our world. Imagine this. A butterfly flaps its wings in the Amazon rainforest. A tiny, seemingly insignificant action, right? But what if I told you that this flutter could set off a chain reaction that leads to a hurricane forming weeks later on the other side of the globe? That's the power of the butterfly effect. But before we dive into the intricacies of this fascinating phenomenon, let's take a step back and explore its origins. The term butterfly effect was coined by meteorologist Edward Lorenz in the 1960s. Lorenz was running weather simulations on his computer, and he noticed something peculiar. When he rounded a number in his initial conditions from 0.506127 to 0.506, the resulting weather patterns diverged dramatically over time. A tiny, seemingly insignificant change led to a completely different outcome. This discovery led Lorenz to develop chaos theory, which states that in complex systems, small changes in initial conditions can lead to vastly different results. It's like the domino effect on steroids. One small push, and the entire system goes haywire. But the butterfly effect isn't just about weather patterns. It applies to virtually every aspect of our lives. Let's take a look at some real-world examples, shall we? Remember the 2000 US presidential election? The race between George W. Bush and Al Gore was so close that it all came down to a recount in Florida. And what was the deciding factor? Butterfly ballots! That's right. The confusing design of the ballot in Palm Beach County led to thousands of voters accidentally casting their votes for the wrong candidate. A tiny flutter of paper. A massive ripple effect on history. But the butterfly effect isn't just about politics. It's about the everyday choices we make, and how they can shape our lives in ways we never imagined. Let's say you decide to hit the snooze button one morning and miss your train to work. As a result, you're not in the office when your boss is looking for someone to take on a new project. Your coworker gets the opportunity instead, and a year later, they're promoted to a position you've been eyeing, all because of a few extra minutes of sleep. It's not just individuals who are subject to the butterfly effect. Entire ecosystems can be thrown out of balance by seemingly small changes. Take the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park in the 1990s. At first glance, you might think, what's the big deal? A few more predators in the park? So what? But the impact of the wolves' return was nothing short of remarkable. You see, the wolves kept the elk population in check, which allowed vegetation to recover along riverbanks. This vegetation stabilized the soil, reducing erosion and creating more habitats for other animals. Beavers returned to the area, building dams that created new wetlands. And with more vegetation and wetlands came more songbirds, otters, and even butterflies, all because of a few dozen wolves. But the butterfly effect isn't just about the natural world. It's about the global economy too. In 2008, the collapse of Lehman Brothers, a major investment bank, triggered a chain reaction that led to a worldwide financial crisis. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, and their savings. And it all started with a few risky investments and a housing bubble. According to a 2018 report by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, the financial crisis cost the U.S. economy an estimated $70,000 per person. That's a staggering figure, and it all stemmed from a few seemingly isolated events. But here's the thing about the butterfly effect. It's not always negative. Small actions can also have incredibly positive consequences. Take the story of Norman Borlaug, an American agronomist who developed high-yield, disease-resistant wheat varieties in the 1960s. Borlaug's work is credited with saving over 1 billion people from starvation during the Green Revolution. One man's research, a cascade of positive change for the world. It's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small our actions may seem. But with great power comes great responsibility, right? If our actions can have such far-reaching consequences, how do we ensure that we're making the right choices? Well, that's where things get a bit tricky. You see, the butterfly effect is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it means that our actions matter, that we have the power to shape the world around us. But on the other hand, it means that the future is inherently unpredictable. We can't always foresee the consequences of our choices, no matter how well-intentioned they may be. Take the development of plastic, for example. When Leo Baekeland invented Bakelite in 1907, the first fully synthetic plastic, he probably didn't envision the environmental crisis that would unfold a century later. Today, we produce over 300 million tons of plastic each year, and much of it ends up in our oceans, choking marine life and contaminating our food chain. According to a 2016 report by the World Economic Forum, there could be more plastic than fish in the ocean by weight by 2050. And it all started with a man trying to create a more durable insulating material. So, what can we do in the face of such uncertainty? Well, for starters, we can embrace the complexity of the world around us. We can recognize that our actions have consequences, even if we can't always predict what those consequences will be. And we can strive to make choices that align with our values and the kind of world we want to live in. But we can also take solace in the fact that small positive actions can have a ripple effect. Every time you choose to recycle, to volunteer, to stand up for what you believe in, you're setting off a chain reaction of goodness. And who knows where those ripples will lead. Maybe your decision to bike to work instead of driving inspires your coworker to do the same. And maybe their decision inspires their family and friends. And maybe, just maybe, those small actions add up to a significant reduction in carbon emissions over time. The point is, we shouldn't let the unpredictability of the future paralyze us. We should embrace the power of small actions and trust that they can lead to big changes. And that brings us back to the butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon. It's a poetic image, isn't it? This tiny creature, unaware of its own significance, setting off a chain reaction that could alter the course of history. But here's the thing, we are all that butterfly. Every choice we make, every action we take, has the potential to create a hurricane of change. And it's up to us to decide what kind of change we want to create. So the next time you're faced with a decision, no matter how small it may seem, remember the butterfly effect. Remember that your actions have consequences, and that those consequences can ripple out in ways you never imagined. And most importantly, remember that you have the power to shape the world around you, one flutter at a time. And that, my friends, is the beauty and the mystery of the butterfly effect. It's a reminder that we are all connected, that our actions matter, and that even the smallest among us can make a big difference. So go out there and flap your wings. Start a hurricane of positive change. And trust that your tiny flutter can lead to a brighter, more beautiful world for us all. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed our exploration of the butterfly effect, and that it's inspired you to think differently about the power of small actions. Remember, every choice you make matters, so make them count. Until next time, this is Aslekeir Gairleif, reminding you to stay curious, stay brave, and keep flapping those wings of change. Butterfly on, my friends!